Dragon Ball is known as the father of shonen, leading its magazine, Shonen Jump, to a peak of 6.5 million copies in circulation per week, and managing to break into the Western mainstream. And of course, it influenced a whole new generation of people. But just how far does its influence go? Or where does it start? What inspired Dragon Ball? Well, most people already know that the journey to the West influenced the story of Dragon Ball, at least before the real estate bubble. The story follows Tan Sanzang, a scholar and a monk, and his journey to the West to go and bring back the Buddhist scriptures to China. He is accompanied by his disciples, that include Sun Wukong, the Monkey King, and Zhu Baije, a pig demon. By now, it's well known that Goku is heavily influenced by Sun Wukong, with Son Goku literally being the localized Japanese name of Sun Wukong. His first design being a monkey boy, before going through its design stages and eventually keeping just the tail, the size-changing staff, and Kintoon, or the flying nimbus. But lesser known is how deep the influence goes. Both Tan Sanzang and Bulma serve as the driving force of the story, with Bulma's character being the inverse of the compassionate monk. Zhu Baije, or Pigsy, is a horny, lazy pigman thing, and I think it's quite obvious who his counterpart is. And there's plenty more, like Erlin Chen, the guy with 3 eyes who's the only one to beat Sun Wukong. Anyway, the stone egg on top of the mountain from which Sun Wukong hatched, the Ox King, teaches that restore your vigor, and so on. The concept of the Dragon Balls was based on Nanso Satomi Hakaden, a tale containing 8 crystal beads, while the main kung fu plot was inspired by Bruce Lee's and Jackie Chan's kung fu films, which were really popping off at that time. Of course, the story of Superman being one of the few survivors of his home world that is sent to Earth in a pod also inspired Dragon Ball, which ironically has circled back with My Adventures of Superman being very heavily influenced by the Android saga and other pop culture movies, like Terminator influencing Metalotron from the Muscle Tower, or Terminator 2 Judgment Day influencing the Cell Saga. Of course, Dragon Ball was inspired by general mythology, ranging from Japanese all the way to Egyptian. And then we come to the influence you really can't forget, the Japanese asset price bubble, which peaked from 1989 to 1991, the years of the Frieza saga, and with it brought up the Jigea, or land sharks, who bought up real estate for cheap using violence and intimidation against the weak in hopes of developing and reselling the property at much higher rates than it was reasonable. So of course they managed to inspire Lord Frieza, who also conquers planets and resells them. But unlike the land sharks of Japan, Frieza may or may not be a better boss and perhaps even a better person. But one of the biggest influences on Akira Toriyama was the dogshit movie Dragon Ball Evolution, so much so that it influenced a man that was retired for almost 20 years to return to his creation before it gets butchered even more. But for a manga taking so many influences, it somehow managed to create even more of them. Goku is known as the daddy of shonen, and that's not just because of Dragon Ball's enormous commercial success. Dragon Ball's existence birthed many more influential and successful works, with many mangaka citing Toriyama's work as their main inspiration. The biggest being, well, the Big Three. One Piece, whose author Eiichiro Oda calls Toriyama a god of manga, was inspired by the sense of adventure in early Dragon Ball. And Dragon Ball's gag humor. Oda especially liked Krillin, saying, "I love Krillin. Out of all the characters, he's the one I love the most. The way he was introduced initially, he was a really unlikable guy who competed with Goku. But he gradually became Goku's best friend. I found that progression incredibly moving." And this can be seen in the early introductions of Zoro and Nami, both of whom were distrustful and selfish, but later turned into Luffy's greatest and most faithful allies. Naruto's author, Kishimoto, is another mangaka who likens Toriyama to a god, specifically saying he is a god of salvation and manga. Before becoming a mangaka, Kishimoto learned what makes manga fun while reading Dragon Ball. And he religiously studied the paneling and layout of Dragon Ball's manga. He also states that Goku was used as a guide while making the personality and appearance of Naruto, with Naruto's orange tracksuit being a direct tribute to Goku's gi. Kishimoto also stated that Sasuke and Boruto's mentor-mentee dynamic was influenced by Piccolo and Gohan's relationship with Bleach, while there is a rumor of it being rejected by Shonen Jump and Toriyama writing a letter of encouragement to Kubo to try again. That's most definitely not the case, as the Bleach one-shot was accepted almost instantly, and while that rumor isn't true, the fact that Toriyama influenced Bleach is very real. Kubo has stated that the philosophy of Dragon Ball villain designs has influenced him in his own writing, with him trying to make villains strong, scary, and cool. Some other notable works that are inspired by Dragon Ball are My Hero Academia, whose main hero, All Might, was made as a hybrid of Superman and Goku, specifically Goku's ability to calm people down, notably naming his arrival on Namek as the main influence. The controversial relationship, no help to the fandom, between Deku and Bakugo also exists because of Dragon Ball, as Bakugo was based on Vegeta's aggressive personality and character redemption, as well as his rivalry with Goku. And while not confirmed, Deku's soft and emotional personality, along with his full cowling lightning, could be seen as taking inspiration from Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. Horikoshi also revealed that he created Star and Stripes quirk just so he could make a grand-scale battle that felt exactly like the massive fights of Dragon Ball, while Fairy Tail author Hiro Mashima has said that when growing up, his favorite manga was Dragon Ball, and that he would never have become a mangaka without it. He also uses Toriyama's philosophy on paneling and even includes some direct homages to Dragon Ball in his fights. The influence of Dragon Ball is vast, as most, if not all, anime takes some influence from Dragon Ball, be it directly, with so many mangaka being fans of it growing up, or indirectly, from other anime inspired by Dragon Ball, like Kagurabachi being inspired by Jujutsu Kaisen, which is inspired by Naruto, who in turn is inspired by Dragon Ball, creating a family tree of inspiration. Dragon Ball's influence can also be noted through the many tropes it popularized. While it's easy to jump to big transformations, Dragon Ball's biggest legacy was the change and growth of the protagonist. During the mid-80s, it was quite rare to see the protagonist grow up, as usually it only happened in sports manga. Most comedy and other shonen manga had the Eternal Boy standard, influenced by Astro Boy, or the never-changing muscular action man as seen in Fist of the North Star. This helped with new readers, brandings, and toys. But during Dragon Ball's run, the big shift from comedy to action had already happened quite a while ago, and it wasn't easy to make action with a design meant for comedy. Toriyama, wanting better action, suggested aging Goku up using a time skip, and the editors, well, they were pretty shocked and said it would be a big mistake. But in the end, Goku grew up, but only after Toriyama threatened to end Dragon Ball. And now, the protagonist growing up is one of the biggest staples of the genre, along with time skips. Dragon Ball also popularized tournament arcs and the famous bracket structure. The simple-minded main character, who wasn't a mountain of muscle, the antagonist joining the main cast, energy clashes, and so many more stereotypes and cliches. Of course, when talking about the influence of Dragon Ball, we must also mention the general influence of Akira Toriyama. With Arale, Akira Toriyama popularized glasses as a fashion trend in Japan, influenced streetwear with future trunks, which is very understandable, the man has drip, made the modern chibi aesthetic with his super deformed characters, which eventually spun back with the creation of Dragon Ball SD, and he created the modern version of the fucking poop emoji. Akira Toriyama's impact reaches the gaming scene as well. Akira Toriyama was the character designer for one of the best regarded RPG games of all time, Chrono Trigger, and for other massive franchises like Dragon Quest, slightly less massive franchises like Blue Dragon, and his designs were a major inspiration to other JRPG games, pretty much making the spiky-haired protagonist the staple of the genre, while his art changed the aesthetics of it, taking JRPGs from dark and gritty to whimsical and fantastical. And of course you can't forget the slime, which Toriyama transformed from a puddle that slightly burns when you touch it to a spherical, goofy starter enemy. And that's not mentioning the fact that Dragon Ball itself is one of the best-selling anime game franchises of all time, only being behind Pokemon, along with having, for better or far worse, 2 mobile games, both of which often featured in the highest earners on the Play Store, with some thanks to me. The influence of Dragon Ball on pop culture and media is undeniable, but it has also cultivated an amazing community and in some places is regarded as a religion. So, how exactly did Dragon Ball influence us?
So Dragon Ball has influenced me, I think, more so through its artistic side. I think more than anything, it inspired me to start drawing again, create my own stories, and from there that inspired me to do YouTube, which then made me interested in animation and direction, which then has launched me to pursue other things like photography and whatnot. So, you know, it all kind of stems back from Dragon Ball and yeah, just those early days of just simply drawing at high school. It is crazy to think how much, I guess, the snowball effect its art style and its artwork had on me.
For me, Dragon Ball has been a huge influence. I wouldn't be where I am without it. I could talk about all the iconic moments and the way it tells its story, but I think what's really touched me the most are the lessons along the way. In particular, Goku's mentality of just trying to be a little better every day. If you push yourself a little harder and just try to overcome the person you were the day before, in any way, being a good person, writing, martial arts, anything, then you will improve and enrich your life. As a franchise itself, it's also influenced me to do what I do. I learned to edit, write, Photoshop, etc. to make Dragon Ball videos. Something I've been doing since I was like 10 years old. It's a series that's been there through my darkest times, and I just hope I can help others appreciate Dragon Ball in the way that I do, because I really do think it's a little deeper than people give it credit for.
Dragon Ball has been not just influential, it's kind of defined most of my adult life. You know, I got into the series back in 2001, I think, was when it first aired on UK TV. I was already into anime by that point because Pokemon existed, but Dragon Ball was what gripped me and actually made my childhood best friend through Dragon Ball, because he had a Dragon Ball pencil case, but he didn't have access to the TV channel that aired Dragon Ball in the UK. And so I used to record every episode each day on VHS and give it to him the next day, and he would watch it, he would give me it back, I'd record it, and like it just went on and on. We just bonded over that. And while that only was, you know, for a couple of years, we were just best friends off the back of that. It formed from Dragon Ball, and that was my bestie. That was where it started. And that's been the case for a lot of Dragon Ball related stuff. You know, I fell out of anime for a couple of years in my teens. I think I was exactly 20 when I got back into Dragon Ball again, and I discovered the Kanzenshuu forums, and I just fell into this world of Dragon Ball, especially the animation, because when I was rediscovering Dragon Ball again as an adult, I was seeing the artists change. I was like, why is this animation quality not consistent? Like, what am I seeing here? And then dug into it some more. It's like, oh, actually, there are multiple studios, and within those studios are different animation supervisors, and under them are key animators, and like they all have their own styles, and that was just mind-blowing to me. And it just became an obsession, especially when Dragon Ball Super came out, and obviously that has famous animation issues. That was kind of what spurred me to look into it even more, to understand why it was that way. I got so into it, and people cared so much about it on those Kanzenshuu forums that I then turned it into a YouTube channel, and that of course became very successful. Had a big community form around that. Then that started to spread out into the wider fandom. People started talking about individual animators, and yeah, it just grew and grew and grew. And you know, I made loads of friends through it. The job that I have right now, working for Totally Not Mark, we are only friends because he saw my videos and reached out to me, and we just became friends that way, and now we work together. And it's one of those shows that has such a strong fandom that I don't think it's possible to be a fan of that show and not just make friends and enjoy discussing it with other people and finding a little niche within that fandom. I remember first reading when Krillin died in original Dragon Ball, back when they were still kids. That was a devastating moment. But also Vegeta crying after being defeated by Frieza on Namek, and Goku was there just listening. That was such a big character moment. I always loved that. Obviously Super Saiyan 2 Gohan is an iconic moment. Vegeta's farewell moment is spectacular. I just love those big character beats. You know, the fights are cool, but Toriyama's character writing is unmatched. And I think that's what unites people. As much as people do focus on the fights in Dragon Ball, it's that character work that I think people love and identify with, and they like to root for them and see them win. It's something that's gonna live on. I think it'll be eternal. And yeah, that is extremely cool.
The first time I saw Dragon Ball was when I was around 3 years old. I wanted to play with my cousins, but they were glued to the TV. It was the Saiyan saga, Goku vs Vegeta. I watched it for a bit and then went back to playing with Legos. Sometime later, I noticed a man screaming on TV, and that was Goku turning Super Saiyan 3. Ever since then, Dragon Ball has had a grip on me, like no other show. From watching AMVs and play fighting with my friends, to being amazed by a PowerPoint presentation of Goku's Super Saiyan 100. Throughout my entire life, Dragon Ball has been with me, and to that extent, of course, it influenced me a lot. In the beginning, it was about how cool fighting was, and to me it was really cool. So cool that I begged my mom to sign me up for combat sports, and eventually she did. I learned martial arts, specifically karate. I worked out even with a broken arm because that's what Goku would do. And even won some competitions. Eventually, I did learn that I'm a lover, not a fighter, so I went to art school, as I really love drawing, and that's mainly because of countless how to draw Goku tutorials. After, I got lazy and fat, because I was sitting and drawing all day. And then Dragon Ball Super came out. I got inspired and started working out again. I lost some weight, and to this day I still strive to achieve Goku's physique. Dragon Ball has been with me my entire life, and it taught me to simply live and enjoy what's before me. It taught me that no matter the struggle, in the end it will all work out fine. Dragon Ball started out as a simple story about a monkey boy living in the mountains and taking influence from old Chinese books and novels. And somehow this simple story transformed. It transformed into a story of growth, a story of change, a story of doing the best you can and trying your hardest. And in the end, it evolved into the people, the community, the artists, and the ideas it left behind. So, I'd like to leave you with a question. How has Dragon Ball influenced you?
Heyo, it's me, MCG. And this is my first long-form video ever. So, thank you for watching to the end. Big thank you to Smugstick, Anime AJ, Forgotten Relic. I really appreciate your help. I can't believe it agreed to do this, to help me out like this. It's really amazing. The community is amazing, and it's amazing to have people like this. All three of them are legends. I mean, I'm inspired by all of them. I mean, Anime AJ and Forgotten Relic are the reason I'm studying 3D animation right now, or they are the reason I know anything about animation. And especially AJ. I used to watch him when I was in high school, when Super was still running. So yeah, anyway, thanks for watching.